It began with a flicker on a dimly lit monitor, an executive's silhouette leaning forward, eyes restless as a viral clip played on loop. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the air conditioner, until the footage unveiled its truth. A black mother, trembling yet unbowed, cradling her 6-year-old son in the center of a polished conference room as her boss's icy words cut through the air like a guillotine. "What the hell is that kid doing here, Kesha? This is an office, not a daycare." In that instant, the powerful facade of Morrison and Associates cracked, and a story of systemic cruelty and a mother's unwavering courage ignited. This is no ordinary tale of corporate drama. It is a meticulously documented saga of injustice, vigilance, and strategic retribution, seen through the eyes of an undercover CEO determined to expose and uproot the rot at its core. Morrison and Associates had long prided itself on ruthless efficiency and unyielding professionalism. Yet behind its glass towers lurked a culture of bias and bullying masterminded by Executive Director Victoria Crawford. At 42, Victoria's privileged upbringing and inherited position granted her unchecked power to humiliate anyone deemed unworthy, a reality Kesha Rodriguez discovered in the most brutal fashion. After 6 years spent transforming department metrics, boosting productivity by 40%, while sacrificing birthdays, weekends, and sleep, Kesha dared to bring her asthmatic son Jordan to her presentation when her babysitter canceled. In 30 seconds of public shaming, her career evaporated and her benefits were rescinded, leaving her son's health care dangling by a thread and her dignity in ruins. Yet within that crucible of humiliation, Kesha's gaze hardened, not with defeat, but with a calculating resolve that foretold a reckoning. From the raw footage of Jordan's labored breaths to the echo of Victoria's heels clicking on marble, every detail would become a weapon in Kesha's arsenal. She watched in quiet fury as her former colleagues Robert, who she had saved from a $200,000 disaster, Jennifer, the accountant whose sympathetic cough went unheard, Marcus, the marketer whose phone fiddling spoke volumes, chose fear over loyalty. And she noted the small, damning fact that Victoria recorded the moment on her cell phone, intending to brandish it as proof of responsible leadership. That digital recording planted the seed for Project Victoria, as Kesha retraced every social media snide remark, every closed-door conversation, every clandestine WhatsApp group chat plotting against working mothers and minorities. But this is not merely Kesha's story, it is the undercover CEO's mission. While the world watched a scandal unfold, an unseen observer delved deep into corporate records and personal histories, assembling a dossier of discrimination, embezzlement, and systemic abuse. Across 3 electrifying phases: public humiliation, covert investigation, and strategic alliance, the stage is set for an explosive confrontation that will not only shatter one tyrant's reign, but reshape the very definition of leadership. Stay close, because in uncovering this web of arrogance and oppression, we will reveal how a mother's pain became the catalyst for justice and how one executive, hidden in plain sight, is orchestrating the takedown of a lifetime. This is Undercover CEO documentary, and the truth is just beginning to surface. From the moment Kesha Rodriguez stepped into the glass-walled conference room, the air crackled with unspoken tension. 20 pairs of eyes followed her every move as she carried Jordan, her pale 6-year-old son, into the heart of the office. The long mahogany table gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights, and on the far side, Victoria Crawford stood with arms folded, her heels clicking in precise, deliberate taps on the marble floor. As Kesha approached the head of the table, Jordan's breathing rattled a dry, desperate cough that made Kesha's heart clench. Around them, the room held its collective breath. Whispered speculations drifted like restless ghosts. Who brought the kid? Will she even present? When Victoria's voice finally cut through, cold, contemptuous, and dripping with authority, it felt like an ice pick to the chest. "What the hell is that kid doing here, Kesha? This is an office, not a daycare." In that split second, every colleague's gaze fused into a prism of judgment, and the entire company watched as a hard-working mother found herself on the verge of complete collapse. For Kesha, this moment was the culmination of 6 years defined by sacrifice and unrelenting dedication. Fresh out of business school at 23, she had walked through Morrison and Associates doors determined to prove herself, and she did. Again and again. Late nights became routine, emails answered at midnight, spreadsheets refined until dawn, and presentations rehearsed until her voice cracked. She traded family dinners and weekend getaways for extra hours in the office, all to compensate for the subtle bias that clung to her like a second skin. As a black woman in a predominantly white, male-dominated environment, success demanded more than competence, it demanded perfection. 6 months in, she spearheaded a process overhaul that boosted her department's efficiency by 40%. By the end of year 1, She was training new hires on her own strategies. Other departments noticed. Executives took praise, but Kesha rarely heard her name. Birthdays and anniversaries passed unnoticed. Jordan's laughter echoed through the empty house. Each accomplishment felt hollow when her name was lost in the shuffle. Each accolade redirected to a more visible colleague. She learned early that to be recognized, she had to work twice as hard and sacrifice twice as much. Yet she never complained. Her pride and her son's future left no room for defeat. On that fateful morning, the stakes were higher than ever. The Miller Project presentation, 3 months in the making, was Kesha's chance to finally step into the spotlight she had earned. Then the babysitter canceled. Panicked and exhausted from an all-night vigil in the emergency room with Jordan's asthma attack, she faced an impossible choice: stay home to care for her son and jeopardize her career, or bring him along and risk everything else. She chose her son. As Victoria's eyes bored into her, Kesha steadied her voice. "I'm so sorry, Miss Crawford. The babysitter canceled at the last minute, and I couldn't miss today's presentation." For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then Victoria strode forward. Her silken tone laced with scorn. "Company policy is clear, no exceptions. You're fired. Effective immediately." The words hit like thunder. Kesha's breath caught as she registered the humiliation of having to surrender her badge and return her company car keys. A hush fell, broken only by the dull thunk of her badge hitting the desk. Behind her, Robert, the very colleague she had saved from a $200,000 error, looked away, averted gaze betraying his fear. Jennifer from accounting coughed nervously and shuffled her papers in a futile attempt to mask sympathy. Marcus fiddled with his phone instead of speaking up. Together, they formed a wall of silence, leaving Kesha exposed and alone under the unforgiving glare of corporate cruelty. As security approached, the enormity of her public firing washed over Kesha in waves of heat and cold. She felt her pulse thudding at her temples, each beat echoing her rage and shock. Jordan's small hand tightened around hers. Despite the seismic shift in her world, she refused to crumble. With trembling fingers, she gathered her belongings: family photos, her son's artwork, the well-worn inhaler that had saved Jordan more times than she could count. Each item she tucked away was a reminder of why she refused to vanish quietly. Her eyes, once shiny with unshed tears, cleared and focused. In that charged moment, humiliation transformed into something far more potent, a steely resolve that shone brighter than any fluorescent boardroom light. As she waited for the elevator's doors to close, she leaned into Jordan and whispered, "Mommy is going to show them what happens when you underestimate an intelligent black woman." The doors slid shut, and the cold metal panel reflected her face in fragments, parts hurt, parts hardened, and all of it ready for the fight ahead. In that silent ride down, a plan began to take shape. Born from the ashes of her defeat and fueled by an unyielding drive for justice, the public humiliation that had threatened to shatter her life would soon become the spark that ignited a calculated, unstoppable comeback. The first seed of retribution sprouted from a single LinkedIn notification. 2 hours after her public firing, Kesha sat at the edge of her worn sofa, Jordan asleep in a blanket nest at her feet. Her eyes flicked to the laptop screen, where Victoria Crawford's latest post glowed like a taunt. "Effective leadership means making tough decisions. We cannot allow emotions and personal situations to compromise professional excellence. #responsible@ERF, #professional standards." The post had already racked up 423 likes, and dozens of congratulatory comments from peers praising Victoria's decisive management style. Each thumbs up felt like another boot to Kesha's ribs, yet nestled within that digital applause lay her first clue. Recalling her mother's words from a decade ago, "Rich people always leave clues, and clues can be followed." Kesha recognized the brass ring Victoria was wearing, a telltale sign that she documented everything for public show. With that revelation came purpose. Kesha opened a new folder on her battered laptop, christening it Project Victoria. She began by capturing every screenshot, the LinkedIn post precise timestamp, each comment praising Victoria for upholding corporate standards, the profile banner celebrating Morrison and Associates' recent accolades. Next, she delved into public records, tracing Victoria's inheritance of her executive title. Her father, a minority partner in the firm, had quietly passed equity and influence to his daughter. After a brief retirement, nothing in Victoria's resume suggested real-world challenges or professional failures. Her ascent had been fueled by connections, not competence. Each discovery sharpened Kesha's focus. This wasn't just personal vengeance. It was a mission to expose systemic abuses wielded by those who thought pedigree excused cruelty. As night deepened outside her window, Kesha's digital detective work escalated into a marathon. Document after document revealed a chilling pattern: 17 employees terminated. Under Victoria's tenure, 15 of them women and 12 minorities. Court dockets uncovered a labor lawsuit from 3 years prior. An employee had accused Victoria of wrongful dismissal under a confidentiality settlement, only to drop the case after a hush money arrangement. And buried deep in an online forum for corporate whistleblowers, Kesha unearthed references to Victoria's private WhatsApp group, where she and other executive women allegedly traded gossip and strategies for managing employees with inconvenient life events, single motherhood, medical emergencies, cultural differences under the guise of cultural incompatibility. Screenshots flowed into Project Victoria, each image a testament to a ruthless regime that thrived on marginalizing the vulnerable. But Kesha knew data meant nothing without allies. Unbeknownst to Jennifer from accounting, whose sympathetic trembling voice had reached out in the conference room, she still had access to Morrison and Associates' shared file system. A quick, carefully worded message confirmed that the archived HR policies included descriptions of terminology on procedures and prior complaint logs. Jennifer's innocuous tip provided Kesha with insider confirmation that official channels had been repeatedly overridden by Victoria's personal vendettas. Then, as the clock inched past 3 o'clock a.m., Kesha's phone vibrated with a message that sent a thrill of hope through her. It was Marcus, her former business school classmate turned private investigator. Over a rush call, he offered clandestine audio-video files, secret recordings of firings, private camera footage showing Victoria berating employees, and even snippets from that exclusive WhatsApp group. Marcus's voice crackled with righteous anger as he described bypassing corporate firewalls and gathering material that would make any jury weep. Within minutes, encrypted files began to flow into her folder, their weight matching the gravity of what Kesha planned to reveal. Yet amid the exhilaration of accumulating evidence, life's harsh realities kept pounding at Kesha's door. Jordan's asthma, aggravated by stress and irregular routines, landed them back in the emergency room for nebulizer treatments. Each hospital visit drained the last of her savings. Her benefits had vanished the moment Victoria pulled the trigger on that firing, but she masked her worry with strategic calm. While nurses monitored Jordan's oxygen levels, Kesha mapped out her next steps, balancing maternal fear and corporate vengeance with the precision of a chess master. Late nights stretched into dawn, her brow furrowed over spreadsheets of fired employees, annotated with dates, demographics, and the flimsiest pretexts used for termination. Her bank account, once taut, now trembled on the brink of deficit as medical bills stacked up. Still, she stayed tethered to the mission. For every pang of guilt over leaving Jordan at daycare or the rental notices piling in the mailbox, she countered with rational urgency: expose Victoria now, or risk letting injustice flourish. In the hush before sunrise, Kesha's apartment felt both sanctuary and siege. The glow of her laptop illuminated a fortress of evidence: screenshots, PDFs, audio clips, and witness statements, all meticulously organized under Project Victoria. Each file name was a declaration. Dismissal _Jan 20 to 3 _VC.mp4, settlement docs _2019.pdf, WhatsApp group snippets.jpg. As Jordan slept on a threadbare couch, inhaler resting beside him, Kesha allowed herself a fleeting moment of fierce hope. Despair had driven her into the digital depths of Victoria's empire, and out of that despair had grown a digital detective, armed not with a badge but with cold, undeniable proof. The journey ahead remained perilous. Victoria's network spanned influential social circles and powerful board members, but Kesha had tapped into a deeper resource: the uncompromising strength of a mother's love fused with a strategist intellect. By the time dawn cracked the sky, Project Victoria stood ready not as a scattered collection of grievances, but as a surgical dossier designed to pierce the heart of systemic abuse. Each piece of evidence formed a link in a chain that would no longer be broken by policy loopholes or privileged immunity. As Kesha closed her laptop and finally allowed herself a few hours of exhausted sleep, one thing was certain: the digital detective had emerged from the ashes of her humiliation, and no amount of corporate power could silence the truth she was about to unleash. When Kesha's phone buzzed on her kitchen counter, she almost ignored it until she heard the breathless urgency in Diana Sanos's voice. They met in the sterile hush of the hospital cafeteria, where the scent of disinfectant mingled with the clatter of trays. Diana, once a high-flying account manager at Morrison and Associates, had her own scars, a forced resignation under the guise of cultural incompatibility, after requesting leave to care for her dying mother. As they sipped lukewarm coffee, their stories interwove like two sides of the same coin: Victoria Crawford's covert sabotage, whispered rumors of Diana's emotional instability, clandestine efforts to trip her up during presentations, and the final, crushing blow when she was escorted out by security. Each revelation fueled Kesha's conviction that this was no isolated vendetta, but a systematic campaign targeting women and minorities. By the time they parted ways, a bond forged in shared injustice had taken shape. That evening, in the glow of her living room lamp, Kesha found in the Project Justice WhatsApp group, Diana added her contacts for other former employees, each with their own dossier of humiliation. There was Marcus, the marketing consultant who'd been sabotaged after refusing to falsify sales figures; Amelia, the diversity officer ostracized for speaking up about unconscious bias; and Roberto, a single father penalized for tending to his child's medical needs. As new members joined, the chat flooded with testimonies, screenshots of offensive internal emails, recordings of Victoria's tirades, and copies of sealed legal settlements. What Victoria thought were trophies of her triumphs now became ammunition for a reckoning. Kesha watched the group's message tally climb into the hundreds, each ping echoing the collective demand for accountability. This coalition of the wronged was no ragtag band, it was a meticulously curated consortium, ready to strike. The turning point arrived with Jennifer Walsh, the 35-year-old daughter of a state senator and a rising star in nonprofit circles. Jennifer's dismissal was classic Victoria, abrupt, humiliating, justified under the pretext of irreconcilable cultural differences. Only this time, Victoria's usual formula backfired. Jennifer's family connections lit up the media horizon. Late one afternoon, Kesha met Jennifer in a discreet cafe tucked between downtown high-rises. Jennifer, blonde, poised, and visibly shaken, revealed that she'd secured airtime on a national news program investigating corporate discrimination. She needed concrete proof to transform personal outrage into public accountability. Over the next 2 hours, Kesha laid bare Project Victoria, folders brimming with financial statements documenting embezzlement of the company's training fund to bankroll Victoria's lavish trips, WhatsApp screenshots where executives boasted about neutralizing single mothers, photos of Victoria's secret files filled with candid employee snapshots and derogatory commentary, and, most damning, 15 videos of firings so cold and calculated they bordered on sadistic performance art. Jennifer's eyes widened with disbelief and indignation. "This is exactly what I need," she whispered, voice trembling. "When this story breaks, it will destroy her." The pieces fell into place with cinematic precision. America Exposed, the primetime investigative program with millions of viewers, agreed to a 45-minute deep dive into the Victoria Crawford case. As the episode aired, the initial clip of Kesha's public firing exploded across social media. Influencers and advocacy groups rallied, spiking the clip's views into the tens of millions within hours. Cut to exclusive footage of the WhatsApp group chat where Victoria and her allies exchanged barbed suggestions like corporate chess moves. Then came the revelation of the $120,000 embezzlement scandal, forged receipts, fictitious training workshops, and credit card statements tracing Victoria's personal expenses. The crescendo featured heart-wrenching interviews with Diana, Marcus, and Jennifer, each recounting how Victoria weaponized power against them. The response was immediate and seismic. 15 simultaneous lawsuits were filed by former employees for wrongful termination, discrimination, defamation, and invasion of privacy. Federal investigators opened inquiries into Morrison and Associates Board, focusing on Victoria's financial misconduct and potential violations of civil rights statutes. Meanwhile, the boardroom fractured as panicked directors demanded answers and major clients threatened to sever ties. In a striking irony, Morrison and Associates' official Instagram account, once a platform for glossy corporate triumph, slipstreamed the moment Victoria was escorted out by security guards, her face blank, hands cuffed. The hashtags #ProjectJustice and #SmartRevenge trended nationwide, turning what began as a single mother's humiliation into a rallying cry against unchecked corporate cruelty. Amid the chaos, a new figure emerged from the shadows. Maya Rodriguez, the interim CEO, called an urgent all-staff meeting, her first public address. Dressed in a simple navy suit, she stepped onto the stage of the same conference room where Kesha had been fired weeks earlier. The cameras rolled as Maya's voice echoed, "Today marks not just the end of one leader's tyranny, but the beginning of our commitment to a culture grounded in dignity, respect, and accountability." She announced comprehensive policy overhauls, independent oversight committees, and anonymous reporting channels. Her final words resonated like a promise forged in justice. "We will rebuild our company on the foundation of empathy and equality. Those who believe power resides in humiliation will find that true leadership grows from lifting one another up." In that moment, the Undercover CEO revealed herself not by name, but by vision, showing that even the highest echelons of corporate power can be reclaimed for integrity. In the days following the expose, Kesha Rodriguez's inbox overflowed with offers. 3 competing firms, each impressed by her strategic prowess, meticulous planning, and unshakable integrity, extended executive-level positions, complete with generous compensation packages and resources to rebuild her life. One offer came from Davies and Partners, a boutique consultancy known for championing diverse leadership. Another from a global tech firm eager to overhaul its corporate culture. The third from a nonprofit coalition focused on workers' rights. Yet when the interim director of Morrison and Associates, now operating under court-appointed trustees, called to offer Kesha her old role back, this time as senior manager with back pay and formal apologies, she paused, gazing out the 23rd floor window of her modest apartment, where the newly installed space available for lease sign adorned her former workplace's facade. She realized her impact could extend far beyond any single office. Politely, she declined the reinstatement. Instead, she chose to step into a role where her voice could reshape systems, not merely departments, deciding that her next move would be measured not in titles, but in transforming workplaces from the ground up. Across town, Morrison and Associates teetered under the weight of lawsuits, lost contracts, and shattered reputation. 3 months after the broadcast, the company declared bankruptcy, its once proud corridors now silent monuments to negligence and prejudice. Meanwhile, high above the skyline, Kesha sat in the corner office of Davies and Partners, the new CEO, surveying an open-concept workspace humming with diverse talent. Her son Jordan, now on a regimen that ensured steady breathing and uninterrupted school days, occasionally popped in with a small toy or drawing, a reminder of why she'd chosen this path. From her glass-walled office, she watched as teams collaborated on client proposals that emphasized ethical leadership and systemic inclusion. The contrast between her new environment and the sterile cruelty of Morrison and Associates was stark. Yet both buildings shaped her journey and underscored that true progress demands courageous leadership beyond corporate boardrooms. Kesha's story rippled into legislative chambers, inspired by public outcry and bipartisan support. Congress fast-tracked the Corporate Discrimination Protection Act, colloquially dubbed the Kesha Rodriguez Act. The new law codified protections for employees facing personal emergencies, mandated transparent termination procedures, and required anonymous reporting mechanisms for harassment and bias. It passed with overwhelming margins, a testament to how one mother's resolve can mobilize lawmakers. In City Hall, mayors and council members cited the act when introducing ordinances that compelled local businesses to implement regular diversity training, anti-retaliation policies, and third-party audits of HR practices. News outlets reported on the dramatic shift. Companies that once viewed inclusion as a checkbox began framing it as core to their mission, citing reduced turnover, enhanced creativity, and stronger community ties. Kesha's name became shorthand for corporate accountability. Her journey studied in business schools as a blueprint for strategic, values-driven leadership. As the credits roll on this chapter of our Undercover CEO documentary, one question looms large. What comes next? Maya Rodriguez, the inscrutable interim CEO who exposed Victoria's tyranny, has just been appointed permanently, and her vision for industry-wide reform is only beginning to unfold. Will she leverage her newfound mandate to dismantle discriminatory networks and build a culture of dignity from within? Can she navigate entrenched interests to ensure that no employee ever suffers another public firing? Like Kesha's, Season 2 will dive deeper into Maya's undercover strategies, the alliances she forges, and the resistance she must overcome to transform an entire sector. Hit subscribe, ring the bell, and prepare for the next phase of our investigation, because the fight for justice in corporate America is far from over, and you won't want to miss a single moment.